So it turns out I never took chemistry in high school. I first took chemistry when I went to Barnard College. And when I fell in love with chemistry was in the lab. You had an unknown compound that you had to figure out what it was, and I loved it.
What I admire about Jackie is her mentorship and her strong support of graduate students and postdocs. She is a mentor's mentor.
She has been an incredible mentor to me, to give me advice on how to run a lab, how to mentor students, how to recruit students.
Jackie was an early proponent of team science. Interdisciplinary science really requires people coming at it from different angles and learning from each other.
It was just a wonderful environment in which to kind of learn how to become a good scientist.
She was able to show a property in DNA that nobody had appreciated before or really anticipated.
And that's one of Jackie's geniuses, is figuring out how to do the right experiments and taking the most interesting hypothesis.
And the ability of her group and her to push that forward in a way to show, like, yes, this is really how this works, is really inspiring.
Over the course of her career, she had to combat a lot of skepticism, but she didn't back down. She kind of soberly kept after it step by step. And I think, for me, that's really inspiring. It shows me that you can be courageous.
Jackie Barton showed that you could balance life outside the lab and inside the lab and not only be productive, but be incredibly impactful.
She's exemplified that you can be a world-class scientist and also a phenomenal mother at the same time.
Jackie's remarkable, and that's why she's so richly deserving of this signature award from the Welch Foundation.
So let's talk about Jackie Barton, the scientist, and her journey, her scientific journey.
So I went to Barnard College, and then I went to Columbia Graduate School, and then I was on the faculty at Columbia. I remember as a student going down the hall to see Bernice Siegel. She had this booming voice. She was, tough as could be. Everything had to be perfect. In your notebook, she wrote more than you wrote. And then I remember as a faculty member now at Columbia, going down the hall at Barnard to see Bernice. And I was still scared to death. She had very high expectations. And then in graduate school, I worked with Steve Lippard. Not a booming voice, but also very high expectations. Now, it was with Steve that I started working on DNA, using metal complexes to probe DNA and do things with DNA. And so then when I moved to Caltech was, and I believe is, the #1 chemistry department. So it was a good move in that respect. But I moved for love, because I love Peter. And Peter was a star. He got tenure at Caltech and grew up here. And when I came to Caltech, I hadn't appreciated the caliber of the students, how extraordinary the students were at Caltech. And now I was in a place where it was the mecca for doing electron transfer and thinking about electron transfer.
DNA is a double helix, so that means 2 strands of nucleic acid, and they spin around like this. And what holds them together is this interaction between what we call bases. And since they interact electronically, you can move electrons up and down. So we call it charge transport or electron transfer. And this was a wild idea at the time.
Jackie's student did an interesting experiment. She said, well, what would happen if I looked at electron transfer between 2 metal complexes that stick to DNA, and I throw in some DNA? And so the electron transfer was anomalously fast. It was an unanticipated finding.
We kept on doing these experiments and coming up with numbers where the electron transfer had to be proceeding over long distances without the metal complexes touching each other. And everybody was saying, that was all crazy.
It was controversial. I'm telling you, people were not thinking that the ideas that we had about the electrical properties of DNA were real.
And so when she got this criticism, Jackie's response with their group was just stiff upper lip. We're scientists. We'll design the next great experiment and we'll execute it. And she did it again and again and again.
It was tough on my students. It was tough all around, but it forced us to ask better and better questions. And it made us do better experiments. And then we started believing this.
She not only confirmed that there was electron transport, but that it could be extended over long distances, and then she worked out the intricacies of the molecular structure and the base pairing and their stacking and the conformations and the interactions to definitively prove that what she had initially observed was in fact real.
You know, so the analogy that I like to use is that the DNA bases are like a stack of copper pennies. And as long as they're well stacked, electrons can go through. But if anything gets it out of line, then that's going to turn off the electron transfer. And that's actually what happens with DNA.
She discovered this amazing phenomenon, right? And then she spent many years trying to understand it.
We would introduce a mismatch. We would introduce a lesion, and that would turn off the electron transfer. And then we realized, hey, we've got a way to detect mismatches and lesions in DNA.
Mistakes in the DNA cause cancer, cause dysregulated gene expression. And so I would say for that second phase of Jackie's career, it switched from being a spectacular biophysics discovery to something now impacting our understanding of human biology, human replication, and undoubtedly human health. Polymerases, repair proteins, all talk to each other through the DNA stack. And so it's a signaling mechanism.
And that gives DNA a new role in the body that we didn't know before.
This was a really big deal. Distant charge transfer in DNA, the connection to that with function and repair.
And then she translated to quite a few applications, DNA binding probes for cancer treatment, electrochemical sensors. She managed to straddle both the applied and the fundamental. And that's very, very rare.
She's really a pioneer for women in chemistry, women in science more broadly. She's of a generation where it was much more difficult to be a woman in science, in academia, than it is now.
I like to think it didn't matter whether I was a woman or a man. It was the science that I did and how I went about doing things.
Jackie's never the woman in the room, okay? And so if there's a prize for women, Jackie's not interested in it. If there's a prize for excellence, Jackie's a player.
I just wanted to do what I was doing and respect me for it.
She's been a powerhouse for as long as I can remember. I think because she is the complete package. She's not only a fantastic scientist, but her character and giving credit to all of the students who have worked with her, that's a model for all of us.
It's always about the people for Jackie and the people you've trained and the beautiful work they've done.
You can promote yourself or you can promote your discipline. And she really promoted her lab and her discipline. And so you can see the echoes of that throughout inorganic chemistry.
And so I think Jackie creates values of excellence, integrity of data. She sets high standards.
And when people have high expectations of you, you meet them and go higher.
And she translates that into the young scientists who work with her.
And so I've now watched my students go off and become professors all over the country, all over the world. And the thing of which I'm most proud is I have over 20 women that are on faculties around the world that had worked with me in my lab. They can sort of see that this is doable and that it's fun and it's a great job. That's how you make the difference for chemistry.